Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the third round of the X2O Trophy which took place in Herentals, and with me here to do that is Issam.
Yes, thank you for having me.
The big story was Mathieu van der Poel. If you need to believe the Belgian media, it was the hair he had, but if you need to believe us, it was, what was it, a demonstration, humiliation of the rest? I would go with demonstration. On one hand, I'm not surprised that Van der Poel does this because he's done it before. At the same time, the fact that he can come into the season like this, his first race, apparently hasn't done much cyclocross preparation, but regardless of the fact if he has or not, like building a minutes lead over all the rest, okay, Wout van Aert wasn't there, but irrelevant, like such a class above the full-timers. It's still special. This is why he's one of the four best cyclocross riders of all time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it is, after such a race, you always say, oh, well, it was expected. But I think that it was definitely a very, it was a great performance. And just that lap one in general was outstanding, I think. And, just shows the class that he is, the rider that he is. And, he made everyone that participated in that race a lesser. That is all due to his power and ability, and not because of the others. They also train, they also eat the same food in a way, and they also put in the hours and the efforts to perform. But today it was just one guy that was a little above of the rest, and especially considering that it was his first race, it was truly again just a great performance. And it was, in a way, you saw a lot of what you could expect from Van der Poel. It was a fast start. When he gets the room, he just goes for it and tries to open the race very early to maybe try and get a lead and build up on that lead. And he did that very well. And he even had that small crash that he had, which is also something that you can expect from Van der Poel in the first race, or the first couple of races, to be honest. But overall, it was just a demonstration of what is possible on a cyclocross bike. I don't think that there are many that can push the limits in such a way, and that's why he's part of the big three. I think that is a title given not only because of the name in general, but also because of the performances on the bike. And today was such a day that we could witness that.
Yeah, you said a little above the rest somewhere, but it was like a cut above the rest. It's not really normal. It's not every day that we see talents like this. I said best of four riders all time. I think it's up for debate. The three others being Sven Nys, Erik de Vlaming, Roland Liboton, in no particular order. I always struggle to find like a balance between these top four. And if Van der Poel continues like this, he has that sight on 7 world titles of Erik de Vlaming. If he breaks that record, I think there's a very strong case to make why he's the best rider of all time. Of course, it's super difficult to compare between the generations, but yeah, it's always difficult. Liboton is the one with the most victories, but how do you count them? How are they counted? Well, long story short, let's actually just summarize the race and focus on the great that was in this race, Mathieu van der Poel himself. It was such a pleasure to see him start his season a week early. He decided this last weekend. He took the fastest start and immediately just blew away from the rest, opened a gap, built a minutes lead despite a crash at some point, and then cruised in the final lap and won by half a minute. The battle for second place was actually pretty interesting. Apart from Van der Poel, it was relatively competitive. It was difficult to get rid of each other. There was a relatively large group fighting for second in the first part of the race. Tom Pidcock was not in that group. He needed to do a lot of chasing. As we know, the Brit usually struggles with his start, especially in the first race of the season for him. Started on the second row, finished the first lap in like 18th or 19th, behind Sander de Vet. He slowly moved himself through the field and joined that group for the second place, and in the final lap managed to distance himself from that group. He took the second spot on the podium, and the third one went to Lars van der Haar, who outsprinted Eli Iserbyt. We've already gone over a bit for that win of Mathieu van der Poel. We've discussed a couple of things about it, Issam, but just maybe a bit of perspective. I think normally we discuss like, hey, where was he better? Technically, physically, I think with Mathieu van der Poel in this race, it's just both. And we can only hope that Pidcock improves his starts a bit, improves a bit of form, and that we will get some competitive battles between those two, and of course between Wout van Aert, who we already saw put in a demonstration in Essen last week, although that was against an even less competitive field than what we had here in Herentals.
Yeah, it's now the anticipation game in a way. Yeah, we're going from race to race now, and in the back of our minds we have these races that happen, and we take that and we go to the next one. And I think, if you look at today's performance of Pidcock, it was, as he said it himself, probably his best race that he ever had at a season start. I think even factually, it is his best result overall of a season start. So I think that, if you look at this race and how it went for him, there is definitely some positives out of it. And I think that if he gets a course that suits him that little more, then it's going to be difficult to beat him. I think that if we get him and Van der Poel both on such a course, I think it's going to be a great battle between the two. But yeah, it's now a bit of guessing in a way. Yeah? So we have to wait and see how that will play out. But I think that if we look at how Pidcock went through the field, and his last lap especially was very good, because he didn't even really look back. He just put on his own pace and made sure that no one was going to stay in his wheel. And to be honest, that last lap kind of killed the chances of Iserbyt to get a third spot, because he was so focused with Pidcock trying maybe to hang on and go for a sprint for second, that I think he used maybe a little bit too much and should have maybe focused a little bit more on Van der Haar behind him. But yeah, that's how the racing goes, and Van der Haar probably saw that a little bit better at that point and realized, okay, I should just stay in the wheel of Iserbyt, and when it comes to a sprint, I will make sure that it will be mine. And he got that podium, and I think that is also in a way encouraging to see that those guys are also, they realize what kind of happened in lap 1, but then you have to just change the mindset and go for second. And I think that most of the competitors that were behind Van der Poel did that very well.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why I didn't want to go with the humiliation of the rest, because I don't think Van der Poel actually humiliated the rest. Like, it would be a humiliation if at Worlds he wins by 3 minutes on Van Aert or something like that. That would be a true humiliation. Like Valkenburg Worlds, that was a humiliation by Wout van Aert on the rest. This is just Mathieu van der Poel being Mathieu van der Poel and winning big time. But this is also, as said, what we're used to, and Van der Haar and Iserbyt both said, well, we hoped that we would be able to stay with him for a couple of laps, but once we saw how fast he just went out from the getaway, there was nothing we could do, and we quickly did what we're by now used to doing, focusing on the best achievable, and in this case that was fighting against Pidcock. I have to say I am somewhat pleasantly surprised by Tom Pidcock, and that might sound a bit strange, but I actually thought he would go worse in his first race back. He too has said he's barely done any cross prep. He's only been building his base and now is doing cross. His start was awful, atrocious even. I think that's also kind of what I expected. He always struggles slightly with starts. He can have good starts. See Tichem last year if he's really focused on it, but he needs to be on the first or second row for it. He was on the second row, but it's still a weak point for him. It's a weakness, and it's something which will probably never completely go away. But then to recover from 18th to 2nd, I think it sounds a bit more dramatic than it was, because that time gap to second place at the end of the first lap wasn't huge. It was 15, 20 seconds, something like that. It's still a decent starting point for him in the season. So I'm pretty excited, because I am considering him to be one of the favorites for Namur tomorrow now, and that's something which I didn't really have all too much faith in yesterday, because I was thinking in this race he would end third at most, but probably 4th, 5th or 6th, something like that was what I expected.
I have to say that I kind of forgot about the whole habit of him having a bad first race if he starts the season in cyclocross. So I have to say that honestly, my expectations was that I saw him in a top 5 or on a podium, to be honest. But I think that regardless of what I expected, I still think that he exceeded it in a way. And it looked good. It was, apart from the start, but, he never panicked. And I think what really helped was that the pace kind of dropped at the front, because there were some of the riders, Van Toerenhout, Iserbyt, Van der Putte also a little bit, they were trying to kind of hang on the wheel of Van der Poel. And I think they kind of had to recover from that, or at least the pace just dropped a little bit. And so for him, it was just a case of trying to move up a little by little, and he did that very well.
As I think you covered that battle between Van der Haar and Iserbyt pretty well, I suggest we look at the entire top 10. Van der Poel with the win ahead of Pidcock, Van der Haar and Iserbyt as discussed. Cameron Mason ended 5th ahead of Niels van der Putte and Laurens Sweeck. Gianni Vermeers ended 8th, Quinten Hermans 9th and Michael van Toerenhout 10th. I don't really want to spend much time talking about Laurens Sweeck and Michael van Toerenhout. I think we can be pretty short. Another disappointing race for both riders who are lacking the form at the moment. Van Toerenhout apparently still suffering a bit from that crash which he had in Kortrijk, influencing him quite a bit, and Sweeck just not having the form this season. Who I do briefly want to touch upon myself is Cameron Mason. I think it was a decent race by him. He is another Brit who has issues in the start. It wasn't as bad as Pidcock, but from the first row, his start was arguably worse. Well, it doesn't make much sense. Let me rephrase that. The start of Mason was maybe worse, but because he was on the first row, the consequences were less severe than for Pidcock. He was like some 5, 6, 7 seconds ahead of Pidcock at the end of the first lap. He rode to 5th place. I think that's decent and kind of the maximum achievable for him on a fast course like this. This is not his strength. He needs more mud, more climbing. I look forward to seeing what he does tomorrow in Namur. And then Issam, I would like to have your thoughts on Gianni Vermeers and Quinten Hermans, two Alpecin de Koning riders who started their cross season here. Both riders who have completely shifted from cross to road priorities now. What do you make of their first race?
Overall, it's a good performance. I think it's always difficult to know where those guys will be at because of the whole preparation and what will be important for them, because they also have their goals and objectives on the road. So you kind of want to have a base right now that is solid, but you don't want to have a peak at this point. So you cannot expect that they are at their best at this point. I think overall it's a solid performance, but if you are a guy like Quinten Hermans that has ambitions to be on the podium at the Worlds in Tabor, then maybe there needs to be like just that little bit more. I think that the rest of the races that he will do this winter will show if that is possible or not. And I think for Vermeers, I think that Vermeers is at a point right now that he's just racing to get some races under his belt, and I don't think that he puts any expectations on his cyclocross season. But I think it's more of fun than anything else, or at least try to be competitive and see where you finish, but no real goals. I think that Hermans has spoken more about trying to, with the absence of Van Aert and Pidcock, try to get a podium. But I think that if that is his objective, then he needs to be a little bit better than what we saw from him today. And there's still a lot of races to come in a couple of weeks. So I think that we will see what time will tell and what the races will bring for Quinten Hermans.
Then let's go and talk about the women's race. That was pretty interesting, actually, and that was somewhat surprising because it was the first competitive race this season with Fem van Empel at the start. Fem van Empel did lead after the start. On the first ascent of the ski hill, we had a leading trio, Fem van Empel together with Lucinda Brandt and Annemarie Worst. They were together for a while, but around the halfway point of the race, Van Empel placed an acceleration. She broke away, and she had a 15-ish second lead at most. I think it was 12. But from there, Lucinda Brandt put the comeback in. She started chasing and closed that gap to Fem van Empel. They were together going into the penultimate lap. Brandt tried a small attack on the ski hill, but didn't really succeed. Van Empel in the final lap attacked on the ski hill, managed to drop Brandt, but she wasn't able to stretch that gap all the way to the finish. Lucinda Brandt came back in the dying phases of the race. She rejoined Fem van Empel at the front with just a minute, 2 minutes of racing to go. It came down to a sprint. Van Empel won that sprint like right from the front. No celebration, but she took the win ahead of Lucinda Brandt, and third place went to Annemarie Worst. Issam, Van Empel, first time that she's really pushed this season. She said that she was recovering still a little bit from a crash. She crashed on the final day of her Jumbo-Visma women's team training camp, which is becoming Visma Lease bike from January 1st onwards. Pretty interesting race. It had a weird dynamic to it because on one hand, Fem van Empel looked to be going super easy, but on the other hand, Lucinda Brandt was just fighting and coming back, and Van Empel couldn't prevent that and just barely won that sprint.
Yeah, it was a strange race in a way, because obviously you kind of expect, as we have seen so far this season, that Van Empel would just create a gap somewhere in the race and just leave the others behind and go to victory. And I think that it was definitely, Brandt made it a race, and Brandt never really gave up in this race, and always tried to keep Van Empel under pressure. And then eventually, I think that Van Empel kind of maybe accepted the fact that it was going to be a battle with Brandt towards the last lap. And I think with this, this course, especially if it's like it is today, a bit drier and it's a bit faster, you kind of see that there are not so many options than try to build up towards that the ski mountain, as it's called in there in Herentals. There's no skiing there, but history and all that.
No, there is skiing. There's like this brush ski track. Like, it's not proper skiing because obviously the weather here is like dreadful. It's always raining. It's always cloudy, in the words of the Americans who are racing here. And they're not wrong, but there's like this like fake grass, like artificial grass, like there's some sort of skiing going on there.
Yeah, okay, but if you would ask someone from France or from Spain, and you would say, "Is this a mountain?" You would call it a hill. So it's we
no, not even. They would call it flat.
Flat, maybe even, yeah. But
yeah, fair enough.
It was a strange race, and if you then look at that last lap, I think that Brandt, in my opinion, could have done certain things different to maybe even get a victory out of it. And then obviously that crucial mistake that she made had to then come back again. Van Empel kind of allows it, or doesn't really have an answer on that, or couldn't really make use of the mistake from Brandt in the last lap. Yeah, it was strange, and especially after the race, obviously we saw that there were some scars, or at least some wounds or something, and it was covered. And apparently it was from last day of the training camp that she had with the moment still Jumbo-Visma, and then also having illness this week. So it's definitely not it's not a great list to have before you start a race. And I think that for Van Empel, it's hard to say right now if this is 100% a Van Empel that we're seeing right now, or it's maybe a phase in the season where she's at. It's going to be interesting to see how the battles will evolve in the next couple of races. But today was, in my opinion, if I have to label the performance of Van Empel, it was confusing for me, and it was hard to judge what to make out of it, if it was someone that was riding with illness and the injuries, or it was someone that was having that but also taking it a little bit easier. It was just hard to judge, and I think that the next couple of races will definitely tell us more about the form of Van Empel and where she's at the moment.
It's extremely hard to judge because in her interview after the race, she said, "I spent the week in bed. I crashed last week on the last day of the training camp. I suffered during the effort today. It's hard for the body to digest food. So I'm happy I'm somewhat healthy again." But Van Empel, and don't take this the wrong way, but Van Empel has something every week, which makes it hard to judge. I completely believe that she crashed. I completely believe that she's been in bed the entire week, and I completely believe that she wasn't fit today. But judging the severeness is difficult because Van Empel has something why it's not optimal. She seems pretty perfectionistic and always looks for improvement, which I think is an attribute she has. It's a part of her skill set. It's probably what makes her this good. the fact that she's always looking for improvement and for that 100% or the 101%. But it makes it hard for me to judge, like, how big will this be? Like, it sounds pretty bad, but at the same time, if you look at last year, and around this time of the year, she also crashed, and it was in Val di Sol. That was a serious crash. She was taken on a stretcher, carried from the course, and she skipped a couple of races then because it was really bad. Now, things seem to be bad, but apparently not so bad that she can't race. So, as you say, it's going to be interesting how does this develop for Van Empel? Like, you need to kind of recover this week before Antwerp. I don't think she's going to do Mol, but you need to be recovered before Antwerp. I don't know how many races she's going to do in the cash period, but there's going to be quite a few. With midweek racing, you don't really recover. And if you just remember to last year, she skipped a couple of races, took a dominant win in Baal, but then still suffered all the way until Nationals, until she went on that training camp in Alicante near Benidorm. She was suffering. She was third at Nationals. She was, I think, third in Zonhoven, where she crashed twice. She was second in Koksijde. It's not bad, and this win today also isn't bad, but it's going to be interesting to see how it develops, and I think tomorrow we will get an indication in Namur. I already was there today. The pre-ride, Van Anrooy was struggling a lot on the technical sections. I think she was on the wrong tire thread. It looked like she was running Grifo tires, definitely Rhino tires. It's going to be interesting. Petersen was there training today. It's a strong start field tomorrow. I think apart from Semanova, everyone is there. It will be interesting to see how she does there. And at the same time, I think Brand can take a lot of confidence from this because she came close today. And Issam, I don't know how you think about this, but normally the Christmas period, like this is when we see the real Lucinda Brand. It's always been like December and January. After that December training camp, Brand hits her peak.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting for sure, because I think that Brand is someone with a lot of experience, can handle multiple races after each other quite well, and is, at the moment in a good flow, it seems, and even disappointed that she didn't beat Van Empel today, and I can feel that in a way, because like I said before, there was a chance today for sure. So yeah, I think, like you said, history has already told us that Brand normally in this period of time gets the most out of it, and I think for her it's there are going to be definitely certain races where she will, if she competes there, that she definitely will race for victory and even win it. And I think that we kind of said that when she was returning and in the first couple of races that we liked the form that she was at that point, and that it was going to be interesting to see how she would grow from that form and what will be the final form in a way. And I think that we're seeing it right now, that it's getting better and better, and it looks very good. And yeah, if Van Empel, for example, is not able to get any better at this point in the next couple of weeks, I think then for Brand there is definitely a chance. And it's I think that for we had a couple of weeks that were, especially if Van Empel was racing, were almost dreadful in a way, because we kind of knew who was going to win. But I think that the next couple of races there will definitely be a lot where, even with the participation of Van Empel, we might see some racing, and that's very good to see.
Let's look at the entire top 10 then. Van Empel took the win ahead of Brand and Vorst. Fourth place was for Betsema ahead of Anna Kay, Manon Bakker, Francesca Baroni, Larissa Hartog, Kiona Krabbe and Xaide van Sinai. Very thin fields here. Issam, I think apart from a slightly disappointing result by Bakker, sixth after that World Cup win last week, is definitely not what she was hoping for. At the same time, fast course like this is not really something for Bakker. Still want to discuss some names here, so that kind of brings me to the numbers 3 and 4, Issam, Vorst and Betsema. It's good for them to be around the podium, but at the same time, I still don't know how I feel about them this season. Like, they're slightly below par, especially Betsema. Both have their reasons for it. Betsema that crashed prior to the season. Vorst, that knee injury, which apparently compromised her preparation. And I feel like I'm going to repeat myself too much, but I just want to say it one more time. I think the world of cyclocross lacks people who can make like the tough decisions at times. Because if you look at the way Lucinda Brand prepared this season after an injury, like she learned from her mistake last year. Last year she rushed into the season after breaking her wrist in Tabor, and she said my base wasn't there, it suffered, I was bad all season. If you see the way Betsema has handled this, I feel like it's not that hard to see that if you're having a compromised preparation, you can't properly train during the season. So Betsema, when she got hit by that car, which of course we doesn't hope happened to anyone, we don't wish it upon anyone, but if it's severe, which it was, I mean, I've seen the pictures of that bike, then why isn't there a person at Poelshaus who can make that decision and say, well, we've missed 3 weeks of training, the base is bad, we're going to sacrifice a significant first part of the season rather than trying to stick bandages on like serious wounds because, we're going to start a week later in Oosterwijk rather than Beringen, we're going to do skip Europeans and train on Texel, and we're not doing Val di Sole or Essen, that's another week. Like, it's just sticking bandages on serious injuries, and it doesn't really help her form, and it makes it super difficult for somebody like Betsema or even Vorst to a lesser extent to like turn around their season. And in a way it's a wasted season for both, when with a slightly longer prep at the cost of the first races they could have been more competitive.
Yeah, I agree. I think, maybe something that plays a role in that is the fact that, Betsema is someone that, her main goals are in cyclocross, and there is not much around that. The summer is, if there are any road races that fit in that preparation, and it's all, it's all focused on the cyclocross season, and you all want to, you do those races just to be as good as possible in the cyclocross season. And I think that, especially for a rider that, has the complete focus on the cyclocross season, I think it's even more difficult. And I think that it's much easier for a rider that can say, well, okay, I sacrifice a little bit of my cyclocross season, but I still have a road season, I still have a mountain bike season that I want to compete in. And I think that it makes it easier for those riders to make such a decision. I think for Brandt also, she can always say, I have also a road season that is coming up and I need to be patient. And for Brandt, it was definitely also the experience that she had from last year. And it's it's difficult in a way for those riders to have the guts to, in a way to just take 2 or 3 4 more weeks off, just because you want to compete in most of the races. You don't want to fall down in the classifications, and there is much at stake in a way. So I understand it, and I definitely see why some riders have difficulties with certain injuries to, that they don't give the appropriate amount of time. But there's just so much pressure on these riders, and they want to be good in certain classifications or in all of them that they can compete in. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit from both sides, and maybe we get to a point somewhere someday that the riders take maybe the quote unquote professional route in that sense, and try to give injuries a little bit more time, because it definitely benefits in terms of performances later on in the season.
Yeah, and I think there's truth in that, and there's importance of the cyclocross season for Betsema, which is maybe higher. But apart from sponsor reasons, I feel like there should be somebody in the team that's then able to make those decisions, and I feel like that's often lacking. And I mean, I just said it in cyclocross, but you often see it on the road as well. I mean, I'm not entirely sure how things will go with Blanca Vash. I feel like that's another example of a rushed recovery, especially if you just look at the way that recovery went. It was a speedy recovery, which is always a good sign, but I don't necessarily see the need of racing 2 weekends, Kortrijk, and then a double weekend Boom-Flamanville before going on a 2-week training camp with your team. SD Works was in Livigno, that's in Italy. They went skiing, which is kind of funny actually, because most teams like Formula 1 drivers need to sign like clauses that they don't go skiing during the season, or sometimes even during the off season, because they don't want injuries. And here they are just doing it on their team training camp, which is fun. They've done some riding. I think they're currently riding in Spain. That's just another example. I think this is like a bigger issue in cycling where it often happens, but let's just hope for the best for them and wrap up this episode with the results from Spain in the Cyclocross Xativia, where Filippo Orts took the win ahead of Clément Venturini and González Iguazo Macho. The women's race was won by Alba Ribes ahead of Alicia González Blanco and Sofia Rodriguez River. Last week, the American National Championships took place. If you listened to the Val di Sol episode, you would have known I had a correct prediction. Eric Brunner won the men's race ahead of Andrew Strohmeyer and Scott Funston. The women's race was won by Clara Honsinger ahead of Katie Klaus and Raylin Nuss. I really recommend rewatching that men's race. It was a great race. Issam, thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me, and I hope I didn't sound that bad. You know, I'm still not throwing in the Van Empel reasons, but I have been sick for a couple of days, and I still feel my throat a little bit. But yeah, thank you for having me.
We're going to be back tomorrow when we discuss the World Cup in Namur. I'm looking forward to it. Stacked start fields, great course, spectacular racing. Should be great. See you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.